Hi there, it's Ian here, and you're watching Grumpy Opinions, the show where I'm going to tell you all about what I think of films, TV shows, games, and life in general. Let's get on with the show. Hey folks, welcome back to part 2 of my Droughtlander Season 5 preview special. In part 1 I gave you a rundown of some of the characters and what they were at the end of last season. So this week I want to change track a little bit and just focus on some of the released promo material, give you a few thoughts on it, as well as looking through aspects of what's there. Now, I would like to mention that this is not just going to be a straight plug through of the material. So no, I'm not going to do like a step-by-step reaction or anything like that. So I'm sorry if there's some kind of major moment that I missed that you're really looking forwards to. But the fact is, as I've said many times, I've never read the books. So please don't be upset if I don't understand that the jar of dill pickles that's in the background of such and such a shot happens to be like the magical key to the potato of sexy shoe magic in book 7. I mean, I'm not going to know that, so I can only go with what I'm taking from the show and what I know based on the previous seasons. Also, as we ramp up to release, there might be some new trailers and junkets and little bits and bobs that kind of inform on some of the stuff that weren't released when I wrote the first part of this and recorded it. So yeah, that wee disclaimer out of the way, why don't we just get cracking with stuff? So first up, I'd like to talk to you about tone. Now tone in cinema or any kind of art is one of those difficult things to nail down precisely. You'll know it when you see it. It's a combination of editing choices, colour palette, cinematography, acting and dialogue, all being put together to bring out a particular emotion that comes through, both through the film and that the audience understands. And a good way to describe it is a bit like tone of voice, because it's not about what's being said, it's about the way that you say it. So it's kind of easy to tell when something's a comedy or a drama, or sometimes even just depending on a particular line reading.
You're still here?
I came back. I thought that's what you wanted.
Nobody wants you here. You're still here.
I came back. Thought that's what you wanted.
Nobody wants you here.
And you'll notice tone most often when it changes unexpectedly, because you'll accept the tone of whatever thing you're watching as being that's the way it is. But it's when something suddenly jumps from a serious moment to comedy, say, in a way that cheapens what's happening.
Thanks.
Bye!
And when you realise that something that should be serious is played for laughs in a way that feels awkward, it can kind of throw you out at the moment. Or worse, it can just really annoy you. I mean, like if somebody did, for example, a horrific storyline that featured a rape victim being turned into like a parody of a French farce, complete with like comedy violence and silly music over the top. I mean, yeah, I'm never forgiven this episode for that. Honestly, that was a terrible decision. Jesus. But tone can be established and tell you an awful lot about a show, and an awful lot about not only that, but a season of a show. And one way you can do that is through something that is going to be the same every time you watch it. And the only thing that's usually the same about a TV show is the opening credits. And it's a long debated fact that a good credit sequence, at least in the days before Netflix, because now obviously it gives you the option to skip them, but a good opening sequence could make or break a TV show. And I've met more than a few folk who agree with me that the Bon Jovi-esque country hair rock opening thing of the Star Trek Enterprise show probably was one of the things that really killed the audience investment, because the song was so bad that people changed channels and then forgot to change back again because they started watching something else. And Outlander does interesting things with its credit sequence, and that makes sense for a show that came out shortly after Game of Thrones, which had its own revolutionary changing week-to-week clockwork landscape where you would see all the different places. I mean, we all know Game of Thrones' intro. And Outlander does a different season-by-season change, and it actually does changes within the seasons as well, altering not only the imagery, but actually the arrangement of the music, depending on where the show's being located. It's a really nice idea, and I think Bear McCreary's rearrangements of the Sky Boat song are always a treat, because it's always that little bit different. Take, for example, the Skirl of the Pipes in Season 1. It's Scotland, so you've got all that Scottish imagery. You've got the imagery of the things that happen in the story, but also you've got that natural Scottish sound coming through the background, which is so inherent to the first season. Similarly, there's a Gaelic twist in Season 2. It kind of befits the time that they were in France, but also part of the song literally sung in French. Then Season 3 throws in this Caribbean drums and a new beat once they've actually headed off to Jamaica, after spending the first half of the season back to the Scottish version. And then Season 4 has this kind of rustic guitar and banjo string thing. You know, it kind of echoes this sort of forager, prospector, new world kind of vibe. And it's interesting that the new scenes feel a little bit different in the new one. I mean, they've gone for a really interesting musical choice, having an a cappella kind of choral rendition of the song, and it's got a sort of mournful feeling to it, an interesting tone that's at. And I completely think that that's connected to the choice of imagery that they've used. And obviously, that's something that's different every season as well. But there's always the usual, like, close-up shots and of people and of hands doing things, surgical stuff or weapons or just something that's from that season. But the interesting thing about season 5 is they've gone for this continued theme of characters standing facing away from the camera, like either alone or in couples. And it's a very lonely feeling. There's a real sense of foreboding and brooding trouble, and it really fits with what I was expecting to come from this season. There's also, interestingly, a really epic feel to this one. I mean, there's lots of shots of things like the sea or formations of soldiers on a misty field and wide open areas, and this big swooping aerial shot of this big house, which I kind of figured it was going to be somewhere new, because I thought no way it could be Fraser's Ridge. Apparently I'm wrong. It's interesting though, because this is kind of the first season to have such a clearly defined vision in the credits, at least as far as I can interpret it. I mean, that's not to say that it won't change, because I mean, let's face it, both seasons 2 and 3 changed everything when the story shifted to another country, and it could be that they're going to do that again in this season. I don't know if they're going to stay in America the whole time. But that kind of tone, it really pertains to this opening sequence, and I'm sure that must be a fundamental thing about this season itself, because what is it that they've given such a unique vision to, and what is it that the show is going to tell us? But what about the actual show itself, and the imagery from within the episodes? Well, it's about time we actually had a little chat about the teaser that dropped last year, and that teaser shows a lot of epic vistas, a lot of heart-pounding drama, and just a wee big hint of action about to come. But it's also kind of vague, and that makes sense for a teaser. And it's important to first of all remember something. Teasers and trailers are full of lies. And what do I mean by that?
I rebel.
I mean, if you've ever seen a trailer for a movie, they tend to set up stuff that maybe doesn't actually happen in the show. I mean, here's an example that you probably know. Have you ever watched a show like America's Next Top Model, or RuPaul's Drag Race, or any of the Housewives shows? You'll know that before the advert break starts, that's what we call the commercials over here in civilization. Anyway, there'll usually be a coming up after the break montage. And they just slap together shots and clips that make it look like somebody's going to have a huge falling out or something terrible is going to happen. And of course, when the adverts are over and you go back and watch it, it usually tends to be that these are completely unrelated moments, and they actually have nothing to do with each other, and nothing major has actually happened. But it's trying to give you that bit of, oh, I have to watch to see what happens feeling. And trailers are a bit like that. So, I mean, I'd take everything you see here with a kind of big pinch of salt. I mean, the first teaser shows a lot. I mean, there's lots of running, there's gunshots, people looking concerned and moody, and there's a big long voiceover from Claire, kind of culminating in her saying,
I hope you don't stay.
and that's a really interesting shot, because it's cut to make it look like she's talking to Jamie, because immediately you get a shot of him. Now, that seemed a bit strange, and of course, some of the later material that's shown up actually shows that it's Roger she's talking to, and you can kind of see that that's the back of Roger's head she's talking to. Then that makes a bit more sense, because later in the teaser, Bree mentions wanting to go back. I mean, presumably she's talking to Roger as well. So clearly this is a theme, and as I suspected, there's a bit of friction in the Mackenzie Randall household, and Roger wants to get back to the bookish world of selfish things like cars, movies, and hygiene and penicillin. I mean, I can't really blame him. And at the end of the teaser, we hear Claire say it's safer in the future. So, I mean, that could well be a really major part of the Bree and Roger story, if it's an accurate reflection of the show in this teaser. But what really surprised me was Claire talking about doing whatever it is she has to do to keep everybody safe, and that coupled with Bree's line about her playing God. So what is Claire actually doing? I mean, it sounds like she might be trying to change the future again, because it worked so well the last time. Or is she going to use like knowledge of a future thing to influence what's going on? And there's a shot of like a dead or dying person and a crying wifey, so maybe she's trying to like save somebody who actually died in history. Maybe not. Maybe it's the other way. Maybe she's choosing not to save somebody who actually survived something and lived. Now, that could be a thing. That's a classic butterfly effect, sort of, Back to the Future 2 kind of stuff here. Time travel paradoxes and things.
The encounter could create a time paradox, the results of which could cause a chain reaction that would unravel the very fabric of the space-time continuum and destroy the entire universe.
Although I'm not actually convinced that this show's really gone out of its way to show that kind of thing. I mean, there was a little bit of it in season 2 when Claire and Jamie tried to stop the Jacobite uprising and then do a 180 when they got back to Scotland, because they suddenly realised it was more beneficial for them for it to go ahead and work. And it turned out that their undermining of it actually was one of the things that caused it to fail. I mean, that's how I read the season anyway. So I got the sense that they couldn't change anything, which means that would be what people call a closed loop timeline. I mean, that's like the very, very first Terminator film. You know, you just can't change things because it all actually loops back, and everything that you did actually is what caused everything in the future. I mean, let's not go into the fact that Terminator 2 goes completely the other way. And let's just not talk about Terminator at all, because that franchise has really gone down the toilet.
That's really disturbing, right?
Anyway, there's an awful lot in this trailer about Jamie, and other than shots of him looking moody or heroic, it's not really told you much. But there is mention of war and battle, and you do see Myrta burning something in Wilmington. And speaking of places, there seems to be a lot of tents and forests, and maybe a lot of this season's going to be them travelling on some kind of battle campaign or something. I don't really know. And I'm not sure how this big house fits into things. As I said, my first guess was actually that it was a house that Jamie got from Tryon or something, some kind of regional commander's homestead to work from, but apparently it seems that's not the case. Now, a lot of the things that I'd actually thought about this original teaser, which I started throwing together some ideas down and back before they released a lot of the other material, and of course they've gone and released like a whole big clip talking to the crew and the cast about things, and various other bits and bobs, and one of the things that's come up through a lot of it is the fact that this is actually apparently Fraser's Ridge. Now, I would never have thought that this was Fraser's Ridge, considering Fraser's Ridge looked like this last season, and then this season it looks like this. So, I mean, I don't know, you tell me, it seems a bit bizarre that they've been able to build it in the amount of time that a baby grew from that size to that size. Now, we'll see how it goes, because who knows, it might actually look really good in the final show. But there's been a lot of other things, a lot of smaller clips that they've released as well, and one of them was a promo clip, which is kind of interesting. Now, this isn't episode footage, it seems a bit too promotional. I mean, what with like a fourth wall break at the end, and that's the bit of Jamie and Claire walking up to the big wicker cross, and then like them looking at the camera while he waves around like a burning firebrand. Now, I can assume that that means something to readers of the book, because the book this is based on is called The Fiery Cross, and it's clearly the same one at the end of the credit sequence. And it's interesting because, I mean, I don't read the book, so I always thought Fiery Cross sounded a bit dodgy, because fiery crosses to me make me think of like the KKK.
I can't see fucking shit out of this thing.
I mean, just, you know, that's what it makes me think of. There were people burning crosses. So, okay, I mean, I presume that'll be something very different in this show, at least I hope so. It would be a very strange turn if suddenly it turned out that they all went and ended up being racist. It would be a bit... It would be a bit like Go Set a Watchman. Anyway, also can I just say that shot is an awful lot better than the terrible, terrible green screen shots of Fraser Ridge. And I like the fact that the final shot of him, and it looks so much better than Fraser's Ridge. Just saying. There was also, interestingly thing, was a wee Christmas video that they released. It was like an hour and odd shot of Claire's surgery with the rain pouring down, and there was also another one where it was a different part of the build. And I didn't realise this is actually something they've done before. They've done it previously with a big burning hearth, and it's one of these Christmas videos that people like to put on in the background in winter because it gives them the feeling of having a burning fire and stuff. So I mean, that's quite quaint, and it lets you get a wee bit of a look. And I don't know, maybe the jar of dill pickles of the magical potato or shoe magic are there in the background somewhere. But anyway, it's quite tiring looking at this. It makes me a little bit sleepy. So I think I'm going to go for a wee nap. So look out for episode 3. And I'll be looking then at the full season trailer and the sneak peek opening of episode 1. But until then, I've been Ian, and these have been some grumpy opinions.